It was a cold Friday evening in Boston, Massachusetts. The sky was covered with dark gray clouds and light snowflakes drifted through the air. People rushed through South Station, eager to catch trains home after another exhausting work week. Some carried briefcases, some held flowers for loved ones. Others simply wanted to escape the cold. Amid all the movement sat one young woman on an old wooden bench at Platform 7. Her name was Emma Carter, 26 years old. She worked as an elementary school teacher in downtown Boston. Emma had warm brown eyes, long chestnut hair tucked beneath a beige wool coat, and around her neck she always wore the same faded blue scarf, a gift from her mother before she passed away years earlier. Every Friday, Emma arrived at exactly 6 p.m. She walked to the same coffee stand without saying a word. The elderly barista already knew her order. 2 medium coffees? Emma smiled softly. Yes, thank you. She paid for both cups. One remained in her left hand. The other she gently placed beside her on the empty bench. No one ever came to drink it. At first, people barely noticed. But weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. The station employees began whispering. Who is she waiting for? Did someone leave her? Maybe her fiancé works on the trains. No one dared ask. Because every Friday she wore the same calm smile, yet her eyes carried a sadness impossible to hide. The old station cleaner, Mr. Howard, had watched Emma for almost 3 years. One evening he quietly approached her. Miss, Emma looked up politely. You know the coffee gets cold every week. She looked at the untouched cup. I know. Then why keep buying it? Emma smiled through misty eyes. Because promises shouldn't disappear just because people do. Mr. Howard didn't understand. But somehow, he felt she wasn't crazy. She was simply protecting something invisible. That Friday, as the station clock struck 7:15, another train arrived. Passengers poured onto the platform. Families hugged, couples kissed, children laughed. Emma watched every face carefully. For just a second, it almost looked like she expected one familiar face to step off the train. But the crowd disappeared. The platform became empty again. She picked up the second untouched coffee, walked to the trash bin, paused, then instead of throwing it away, she left it on the bench. Maybe someone who needed warmth would find it. As she slowly walked toward the station exit, the narrator says, everyone believed Emma was waiting for someone who never came. But the truth was far more heartbreaking. 3 years earlier, everything had begun with a train that both of them accidentally missed. 3 years earlier, it was the first Friday of October. Boston was glowing with autumn colors. The sidewalks were covered in red, orange, and golden leaves, and a cool breeze carried the smell of fresh coffee through the streets. Emma had just finished her first month as a third-grade teacher. It had been a long day. One of her students had cried because his parents were getting divorced. Another had forgotten his lunch, and Emma had stayed late decorating her classroom for Halloween. She was exhausted. All she wanted was to catch the 6:15 p.m. train home. She hurried into South Station, weaving through the crowd with a paper bag in one hand and a stack of student assignments in the other. The loudspeaker echoed through the station. Attention passengers, train 214 to Cambridge will depart from platform 7 in 2 minutes. Emma started running. Just a little faster, just a few more steps, she could still make it. Then, suddenly, an elderly woman walking ahead of her stumbled. Her grocery bag slipped from her hands. Apples rolled across the floor. A carton of eggs shattered. Milk spilled across the platform. People looked, but no one stopped. Everyone was too busy trying not to miss their trains. Emma didn't even think twice. She dropped her own bag and rushed over. It's okay, ma'am, she said gently. I've got you. She knelt on the cold floor, gathering apples one by one. At that exact moment, a tall young man in a navy jacket noticed what had happened. His name was Ryan Brooks. He was 28, an architect who spent more time designing buildings than talking to people. Ryan had also been running for the same train. He looked at the departure board, then at Emma, then back at the train. For a brief second, he had a choice: catch the train or help a stranger. Without saying a word, he walked over and picked up the remaining groceries. "I'll get these," he said. Emma looked up, surprised. "Thank you." The old woman smiled with tears in her eyes. "You two are angels." By the time everything was packed again, a loud whistle echoed through the station. The train doors closed. Slowly, the train pulled away from platform 7. Emma stared at it in disbelief. "Oh no," Ryan let out a small laugh. "I guess we both missed it." Emma sighed dramatically. "My boss is going to think I'm terrible at catching trains." Ryan smiled. "I think saving someone's day is a better excuse." For the first time all afternoon, Emma laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh, just enough to make Ryan smile too. For a few seconds, they stood there awkwardly. Neither of them wanted to leave. Neither knew what to say next. Then Ryan noticed a tiny coffee shop inside the station. He pointed toward it. "Well, we've got 30 minutes until the next train." Emma followed his gaze. "So we can either stand here pretending we're not disappointed or have coffee." Ryan chuckled. "I vote for coffee." "So do I." Inside the small cafe, the warm smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air. Rain began tapping softly against the windows. Emma ordered a vanilla latte. Ryan chose black coffee. "No sugar," he said. Emma raised an eyebrow. "That's brave." Ryan shrugged. "Or maybe just boring." Emma smiled. "I'll decide after talking to you." Ryan laughed. It was the first genuine laugh he'd had in weeks. They sat by the window, watching trains come and go. At first, the conversation was simple. "What do you do?" "I'm a teacher." "And you?" "Architect. That explains the notebook." Ryan looked down. He had been sketching the old station without even realizing it. Emma leaned closer. "Did you draw that?" Ryan nodded shyly. She studied the sketch carefully. "It's beautiful." Ryan looked away, embarrassed. "No one's ever called my drawings beautiful." Emma smiled warmly. Then, no one's looked closely enough. For a brief moment, the noise of the station disappeared. It felt as if two complete strangers had known each other for years. Outside, another announcement echoed through the station. "Train to Cambridge now boarding at platform 7. Ryan looked at the clock. "We should probably go." Emma nodded. Yeah, but strangely, neither of them stood up immediately. They both wished the next train would be just a little later, because somehow, missing one train had led them to the most unexpected conversation of their lives. As they finally walked toward platform 7 together, neither of them knew that this chance meeting was about to become the beginning of a love story that would change both of their lives forever. The following Friday, Emma wasn't planning to go to South Station early. She told herself the man she met last week was just a stranger. A kind stranger, nothing more. Yet all day at school, she found herself glancing at the classroom clock. Her students noticed. "Miss Carter, are you waiting for someone?" Emma laughed nervously. "No, just waiting for the weekend." But even she knew that wasn't entirely true. When the final school bell rang, Emma packed her bag faster than usual. She reached South Station at 5:55 p.m., 5 minutes earlier than normal. She walked past the coffee stand, trying to convince herself not to look toward platform 7. He's probably not even here. Why would he be? Still, her eyes searched the crowd. Businessmen rushed by. College students laughed together. A little girl chased her father across the station. But there was no Ryan. Emma smiled at herself. See? That was silly. She turned to leave. Then she heard a familiar voice behind her. "I was starting to think I'd imagined you." She froze. Slowly turning around, she saw Ryan standing a few feet away, holding 2 coffee cups. One black, one vanilla latte, exactly the same drinks they had ordered the week before. Emma blinked in surprise. "You remembered." Ryan smiled. "You remembered too." For a second, neither of them spoke. Then they both laughed. They sat on the same wooden bench at platform 7. This time, the conversation came naturally. No awkward silence, No forced questions. Ryan handed her the vanilla latte. I guessed you still liked this. Emma took the cup. You guessed right. Ryan lifted his black coffee. And yes, I still drink boring coffee. Emma laughed. I was hoping you'd upgraded. Not yet. As trains arrived and departed, they talked for almost an hour. They spoke about everything. Emma told Ryan funny stories about her students, like the little boy who believed dinosaurs still lived in Canada. Ryan laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. Then Ryan shared stories from his job. He explained how every building had a purpose. People only notice how buildings look, he said. But I think the most beautiful buildings are the ones that make people feel safe. Emma looked at him thoughtfully. I think people are like that too. Ryan looked at her. What do you mean? Some people are beautiful because of how they look. She paused. But others, they make you feel safe. Ryan didn't answer. He simply smiled. Because for the first time in a very long time, he felt exactly that. Weeks passed. Then months. Without ever discussing it, Friday evenings became their tradition. No matter how busy life became, no matter how stressful work was, at exactly 6 o'clock every Friday, they met at Platform 7. Sometimes they sat on the bench for hours. Sometimes they walked through Boston Common with coffee in their hands. Sometimes they wandered into bookstores, challenging each other to pick the worst novel they could find. Ryan always lost. Emma always laughed. And somehow, those ordinary Fridays became the best part of their week. One evening, as snow began falling over the station, Emma asked, "So, why do you always carry that camera?" Ryan looked down at the old film camera hanging around his neck. It belonged to my younger brother. Emma noticed the sadness in his eyes. You've mentioned him before. Ryan nodded quietly. He loved taking pictures of moments people didn't notice. What happened to him? Ryan stayed silent for several seconds. The sounds of the station seemed to fade away. Finally, he whispered, "He died in a car accident 4 years ago." Emma's smile disappeared. "I'm so sorry." Ryan looked out toward the tracks. "After he died, I stopped taking pictures." Emma frowned. "But you still carry the camera." Ryan gently held it in his hands. "I keep thinking, maybe one day I'll find something worth photographing again." Emma didn't know what to say. Instead, she stood up, walked a few steps away, then turned back toward Ryan with a playful smile. "Then what are you waiting for?" Ryan looked confused. She spread her arms dramatically as snowflakes fell around her. "Here's your photo." Ryan stared at her for a moment. The station lights reflected in the falling snow. Emma was laughing like a child, completely carefree. Without thinking, Ryan lifted the camera. Click, the sound echoed softly. It was the first photograph he had taken since his brother's death. He lowered the camera and looked at the picture. Emma stood in the snow, smiling brighter than the city lights. Ryan whispered to himself, "I finally found something worth photographing." As they walked home that night, neither of them said the words "I love you." They didn't have to, because love had already begun to grow in shared coffees, missed trains, long conversations, and quiet moments that neither of them wanted to end. Winter slowly settled over Boston. By December, Platform 7 had become more than just a train station. It had become their place. The barista no longer asked what they wanted. As soon as Emma walked through the station doors, he would already begin preparing a vanilla latte and a black coffee. Ryan would always arrive a few minutes later, sometimes carrying a camera, sometimes carrying flowers he had picked up from a small flower shop across the street. Never roses. Emma once asked why. Ryan smiled. "Roses are for people trying to impress someone." Emma raised an eyebrow. "And these?" He handed her a small bouquet of white daisies. "These are for someone who already impressed me." Emma couldn't stop smiling. The weeks passed like pages in a beautiful novel. They celebrated Christmas together, walked through streets covered in lights, shared hot chocolate at a winter market. built a tiny snowman in Boston Common that leaned so badly it looked like it was about to fall over. Emma laughed until tears rolled down her cheeks. Ryan secretly took a picture of her laughing. It became his favorite photograph. One Friday evening, after watching the sunset from Platform 7, Emma noticed something unusual. Ryan had become quiet, very quiet. Normally, he would tell jokes or point out funny passengers, but tonight, he barely spoke. Emma looked at him carefully. Ryan, Where did you go just now? Ryan looked confused. I'm sitting right here. Emma smiled sadly. No, your mind isn't. He looked away. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he whispered, Do you ever feel like you're afraid to be happy? Emma frowned. What do you mean? Ryan took a deep breath. My brother was 23. He had everything planned. A new job, a new apartment, a girl he wanted to marry, and then he snapped his fingers. One rainy night changed everything. Emma quietly listened. Ryan continued, Since that day, I stopped making plans. I stopped believing in forever. Because forever can disappear in a second. Emma gently placed her hand over his. For 3 months, you've made every Friday the happiest part of my life. Ryan looked into her eyes. I know. That's what scares me. Emma stayed silent. Ryan continued. I've lost people before. My parents divorced. My brother died. Friends moved away. I learned something. The more you love someone, the more it hurts when they're gone. Emma slowly shook her head. No. Ryan looked confused. No? The more you love someone, the more beautiful the time with them becomes. Ryan looked away. I don't think I'm strong enough to lose someone again. Emma smiled softly. And what if you're strong enough to keep them? Ryan didn't answer. A cold wind swept across the platform. Emma stood up. She walked a few steps toward the railway tracks before turning back. Come here. Ryan joined her. She pointed toward the tracks stretching into the distance. See those? Ryan nodded. They disappear. Emma smiled. They don't. We just can't see where they go. Ryan looked at her quietly. I think life is like that. Just because we can't see the ending doesn't mean we shouldn't enjoy the journey. Ryan felt something inside him begin to change. For years, he had been surviving. But Emma was teaching him how to live again. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a tiny folded photograph. It was the picture he had taken of Emma laughing in the snow. He handed it to her. I've never shown this to anyone. Emma looked at the photo. It's beautiful. Ryan smiled. No, you are. Emma looked up, her cheeks turning pink. For the first time, neither of them looked away. The station around them faded into the background. There were no trains, no announcements, no crowds, just 2 people standing beneath the station lights. Ryan slowly leaned closer. Emma closed the distance between them. Their first kiss was gentle. Short, quiet, but it said everything neither of them had been brave enough to say. When they finally stepped back, Emma laughed nervously. So, Ryan smiled. So, I guess we're officially terrible at pretending we're just friends. Emma laughed. I was waiting for you to figure that out. That night, as Emma boarded her train, Ryan stood on the platform watching it disappear into the darkness. For the first time in 4 years, he wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Because tomorrow meant one thing. Another Friday was 1 week closer. And every Friday meant Emma. He had no idea that fate was already counting down the days until it would test their love in the cruelest way imaginable. The weeks after their first kiss felt like the beginning of a new life. Nothing around them had changed. The same trains, the same platform, the same coffee stand. But everything felt different. Now, whenever Emma saw Ryan waiting on Platform 7, she no longer waved from a distance. She ran toward him. And Ryan, who had once been afraid of showing affection in public, always opened his arms before she even reached him. Passengers often smiled as they watched the couple meet every Friday. They had unknowingly become part of the station's scenery. One evening, the elderly barista smiled as Ryan paid for their coffees. "You know," he said, "I've been making your drinks for almost a year now." Ryan laughed. "That long?" The old man nodded. "I've watched thousands of people pass through this station. Some are in love. Some only think they are." He glanced toward Emma, who was standing near the platform, watching the sunset. "But the way she looks at you, I haven't seen that in a very long time." Ryan looked at Emma. She was smiling at a little girl who was trying to catch snowflakes with her tiny gloves. Ryan couldn't help but smile too. "I know," he whispered. "I'm the luckiest man in Boston." That night, Ryan didn't go home. Instead, he walked into a small jewelry store tucked between two old buildings near the station. He stood in front of the display case for almost 20 minutes. Diamond rings sparkled under the warm lights. Some were expensive, some were extravagant. But none of them felt like Emma. Finally, an elderly jeweler approached him. "Looking for something special?" Ryan nodded. "I want a ring that says..." He paused, searching for the right words. "Thank you for changing my life." The jeweler smiled warmly. "I think I have just the one." He placed a simple silver ring on the counter. It wasn't large. It wasn't flashy. A tiny sapphire sat at its center, the same soft blue as Emma's favorite scarf. Ryan stared at it. "This is perfect." Over the next few days, Ryan became unusually secretive. He kept checking his phone, making mysterious phone calls, hiding small paper bags whenever Emma came near. Emma noticed immediately. One Friday, she folded her arms and narrowed her eyes. "Okay, what are you hiding?" Ryan tried to sound innocent. "Nothing," Emma laughed. "Ryan Brooks, you're a terrible liar." He grinned. "You'll find out soon." Emma spent the entire week trying to guess. "Are you planning a trip?" "No." "Did you buy a dog?" Ryan laughed. "No, you definitely bought something." "Maybe." "What is it?" "You'll have to wait." Emma sighed dramatically. "I hate surprises." Ryan smiled. "No, you don't." She smiled back. "You're right." The following Friday finally arrived. Snow covered the streets of Boston like a soft white blanket. Platform 7 looked magical beneath the glowing station lights. Ryan arrived nearly 30 minutes early. His hands were shaking. Not from the cold, from nervousness. Inside his coat pocket rested the small velvet ring box. He touched it every few minutes, just to make sure it was still there. Emma arrived wearing her beige coat and the same blue scarf. She noticed Ryan looked unusually tense. "You okay?" Ryan forced a smile. "Yeah, you look like you're about to take an exam." He laughed nervously. "Something like that." They sat together, sipping coffee while talking about their week. Emma had no idea that Ryan barely heard a single word she was saying. His heart was racing. He had rehearsed the proposal dozens of times. Every speech sounded perfect in his apartment. Now, he couldn't remember a single sentence. Finally, Ryan stood up. "I'll be right back." Emma frowned. "Where are you going? Just trust me." A few minutes later, he returned carrying 2 fresh coffees. Emma smiled. "We already had coffee." Ryan shrugged. "I figured one more wouldn't hurt." She laughed. "You really are addicted." Ryan handed her the cup with a small smile. "Open the lid." Emma looked confused. "Why?" "Just do it." Still smiling, she lifted the plastic lid. At first, she saw nothing. Then, nestled safely inside a tiny waterproof capsule resting above the cup, was a silver ring. Emma froze. Her hands began to tremble. Slowly, she looked up at Ryan. He was already down on one knee. The busy station around them suddenly felt silent. People walking past slowed down. Some stopped completely. A violinist nearby, seeing what was happening, quietly began playing a soft melody. Ryan looked into Emma's tear-filled eyes. His voice shook with emotion. "Emma, the day we missed that train, I thought I had lost 30 minutes of my life." He smiled. "But I actually found the rest of it." Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. Ryan continued, "You taught me that loving someone isn't something to fear. It's the bravest thing a person can do. He took a deep breath. So, will you keep missing trains with me for the rest of our lives? Emma couldn't even speak. She covered her mouth with both hands as tears streamed down her face. Then, through a laugh mixed with crying, she whispered, "Yes." Ryan smiled. She laughed again. Louder, Emma threw her arms around him and cried, "Yes." The entire platform erupted in applause. Strangers cheered. The barista wiped tears from his eyes. Even the station security guard clapped with a huge smile. Ryan slipped the ring onto Emma's finger. It fit perfectly. As they embraced, Emma whispered into his ear, "I don't care where life takes us, as long as every Friday starts with you." Ryan held her tighter. "I promise. No matter what happens, I'll always come back to Platform 7. Neither of them knew that this promise would soon become the most heartbreaking promise of all. The weeks after the proposal were the happiest either of them had ever known. Emma couldn't stop looking at the ring on her finger. Sometimes, in the middle of class, sunlight would catch the tiny sapphire, and she would smile without realizing it. Her students noticed. One little girl raised her hand. "Miss Carter?" Emma looked up. "Yes, Lily? Why do you keep smiling at your hand?" The classroom burst into laughter. Emma blushed. "Oh, I guess I'm just having a really good year." Every Friday after work, Emma and Ryan still met at Platform 7. Some things never changed. 2 coffees. The same bench. The same quiet conversations. But now, instead of talking about books or funny passengers, they talked about their future. "What kind of house do you want?" Emma asked one evening. Ryan thought for a moment. "Nothing fancy, just a front porch." Emma smiled. "So you can drink boring coffee outside?" Ryan laughed. "Exactly. And you?" Emma looked toward the tracks. "I want a kitchen with a big window, so every morning the sunlight fills the room." Ryan nodded. "I can build that." Emma smiled. "I know you can." The next weekend, they began visiting houses around Boston. The first house looked beautiful in the photos, but the roof leaked. The second one had tiny bedrooms. The third was perfect. A white 2-story home with blue shutters, a small garden, and a wooden porch just like Ryan had imagined. Emma stepped into the backyard. A giant maple tree stood in the corner, its branches swaying gently in the wind. She closed her eyes. "I can picture it." Ryan walked beside her. "What?" "A swing. For our future kids." Ryan smiled. "And a dog." Emma laughed. "Definitely a dog." "What kind?" "A golden retriever." Ryan nodded. "His name?" Emma pretended to think. "Charlie." Ryan grinned. "Charlie Brooks." Emma laughed. "He already has your last name?" Ryan shrugged dramatically. "He's loyal." Emma rolled her eyes. "You are unbelievable." As Christmas approached, they started planning their wedding. Nothing extravagant. Emma wanted something simple. A small ceremony, close family, close friends, and afterward, a quiet dinner by the harbor. Ryan agreed immediately. "The wedding isn't the important part." Emma looked at him. "What is?" Ryan gently held her hand. "The marriage." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder. "I love you." Ryan kissed her forehead. "I love you more." One snowy Friday evening, they sat on their favorite bench at Platform 7. The station was quieter than usual. Emma suddenly asked, "Promise me something." Ryan smiled. "Anything. If life ever gets difficult, if we ever argue, if we're ever too busy, promise we'll still meet here every Friday." Ryan looked around the platform that had changed both their lives. He smiled softly. "I promise." Emma held out her little finger. "Pinky promise." Ryan laughed. "Seriously?" She nodded. "Very seriously." He hooked his finger around hers. "Pinky promise." They laughed like children. Neither of them realized they had just made a promise that only one of them would be able to keep. A few days later, Ryan left work early. He had another surprise planned. Not for their wedding. For Emma. He visited an old photography studio. The owner carefully handed him a beautifully bound leather album. Inside were dozens of photographs. Every Friday, every season. Emma laughing in the snow, Emma reading on the station bench, Emma holding coffee with both hands to stay warm, Emma watching trains disappear into the sunset. The final page was empty. Beneath it, Ryan had written one sentence. "The rest of our story hasn't happened yet." He smiled to himself. "I'll fill this album for the next 50 years. That Friday night, as Ryan drove home through light snowfall, his phone rang. It was his best friend, Daniel. "Hey. Don't forget my engagement dinner is next Friday." Ryan smiled. "I wouldn't miss it. And bring Emma. Everyone wants to meet the woman who finally convinced you to smile again." Ryan laughed. "I will." He ended the call and glanced at the passenger seat. The photo album rested there, beside a small envelope. Inside the envelope were honeymoon tickets. A week in Maine, where Emma had always dreamed of watching the sunrise over the Atlantic Ocean. Ryan imagined her reaction. He couldn't wait to surprise her. The next morning, Emma called him. "Good morning, Fionk." Ryan smiled the moment he heard her voice. "Good morning, future Mrs. Brooks," Emma laughed. "I still can't believe you proposed with a coffee cup." Ryan chuckled. "I had to stay true to our story." She smiled. "So, what are we doing next Friday?" Ryan looked out the office window. He hesitated for just a second. Then he answered, "The same thing we always do. We'll meet at platform 7. Emma smiled. "I'll be there." Ryan replied softly, "I'll never miss it." The week passed faster than either of them expected. Emma spent every evening looking through wedding magazines, circling ideas with a red pen. She wasn't interested in expensive decorations or luxury venues. She cared about the little things. The flowers, the music, the vows. She wanted a wedding that felt like them. Simple, warm, real. Ryan, meanwhile, had become unusually busy. Every lunch break, he slipped away from his office without telling anyone where he was going. He met with the photographer. He confirmed the honeymoon reservations. He even picked up Emma's favorite white lilies for the wedding ceremony. Everything was falling into place. Or at least, it seemed that way. Finally, Friday arrived. Emma woke up happier than she had in months. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror, smiling at the sapphire ring on her finger. Then she reached for the blue scarf her mother had given her years ago. She wrapped it around her neck. "Mom," she whispered softly. "I wish you could meet him." A gentle smile crossed her face. "I think you would have loved him." At the same time, across the city, Ryan looked at the clock. 5:10 p.m. He was running late. Construction work at his office had delayed an important meeting. He grabbed his coat, the leather photo album, and the envelope containing the honeymoon tickets. Before leaving, his assistant called out, "Ryan." He turned. "Congratulations again." Ryan smiled. "Thanks. Big plans tonight?" Ryan grinned. "The biggest." Outside, snow had started falling again, not heavily. Just enough to cover the roads with a thin layer of ice. Ryan unlocked his car and placed the photo album carefully on the passenger seat. He looked at the empty final page. "The rest of our story," he smiled, "starts tonight." Then he started the engine. Meanwhile, Emma arrived at South Station exactly at 5:55 p.m. Just like always. The old barista waved at her. "The usual?" Emma nodded. "The usual. 2 coffees. 1 vanilla latte, 1 black." She carried both cups toward platform 7. Ryan wasn't there yet. She checked her watch. 6:02. "He'll be here." She smiled. "He always is." 6:10. Still no Ryan. Emma pulled out her phone. One unread message. "Ryan, running a little late. Don't leave without me." Emma laughed quietly. She typed back, "I'm at platform 7. I'll wait." Across town, Ryan's car moved slowly through traffic. His windshield wipers pushed away the falling snow. The roads had become slippery. His phone buzzed. Emma's message appeared on the screen. He smiled. Without taking his eyes off the road, he pressed the voice reply button. I'll be there in 10 minutes. At that exact moment, a pickup truck approached an intersection too fast. The driver hit the brakes. The tires slid across the icy road. The truck began spinning uncontrollably. Ryan looked up. Everything happened in seconds. Headlights, the sound of screeching tires, a loud horn. Then, crash. Metal twisted against metal. Glass exploded across the road. The leather photo album flew from the passenger seat. Its pages scattered into the snow. The honeymoon tickets drifted into the freezing wind. Then, silence back at platform 7, Emma looked at the station clock. 6:18. Ryan was never this late. She called him. No answer. She smiled nervously. He's probably driving. She waited. Another train arrived. People stepped off. None of them were Ryan. 6:30. She called again. Still nothing. Her coffee had already begun to grow cold. The old barista looked at her with concern. You okay, Emma? She forced a smile. I'm sure he's just stuck in traffic. But for the first time, she felt something she couldn't explain. A quiet fear. The kind that settles in your chest without a reason. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered immediately. Ryan? A calm voice replied. Is this Emma Carter? Yes. My name is Officer Michael Hayes. Emma's smile disappeared. I'm calling from Boston General Hospital. Her knees weakened. She grabbed the edge of the bench. The officer continued gently. There has been an accident. Emma could barely breathe. No, please, no. The world around her seemed to disappear. The trains, the announcements, the people. Everything became distant. All she could hear was her own heartbeat. The officer spoke one final sentence. You should come immediately. The 2 untouched cups of coffee remained on the wooden bench. Steam slowly faded into the cold evening air. Emma stood frozen, unable to move, unable to think, unable to believe that a promise made just 1 hour earlier had already been broken. Emma couldn't remember leaving the station. Later, she would try to replay that night in her mind, but everything after the phone call became a blur. She didn't remember getting into the taxi. She didn't remember giving the driver the hospital's address. She only remembered one thing. She kept whispering the same sentence over and over. Please let him be okay. Please let him be okay. Snow continued to fall as the taxi raced through the streets of Boston. Every red traffic light felt like an eternity. Emma looked out the window, silently begging the city to move faster. The blue scarf around her neck trembled with every shaky breath she took. When the taxi finally stopped outside Boston General Hospital, Emma didn't even wait for the driver to open the door. She threw cash onto the seat and ran inside. The emergency room was bright, too bright. Doctors hurried past. Nurses called out instructions. Monitors beeped from every direction. Everything felt loud. Everything felt unreal. A police officer standing near the reception desk noticed her immediately. Emma Carter? She nodded, unable to speak. I'm Officer Michael Hayes. His voice was calm, gentle, the kind of voice people only used when they were about to change someone's life forever. This way, they walked down a long hallway. Emma's footsteps echoed against the polished floor. Every door they passed made her heart beat faster. Finally, they stopped outside a room. The officer hesitated before opening the door. Then he quietly said, "He's alive." Emma closed her eyes in relief. For one brief moment, hope returned. But then he continued, "For now." Emma stepped inside. Ryan lay on the hospital bed, surrounded by machines. His face was pale. A bandage wrapped around his forehead. His right arm rested in a cast. Bruises covered his hands. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the room. Emma's tears began falling before she even reached him. She slowly took his hand. It was cold. Far colder than she had ever felt before. A few seconds later, Ryan's fingers moved slightly. His eyes opened just enough to recognize her. He smiled weakly. "Hey." Emma tried to smile back. Instead, she burst into tears. "You scared me." Ryan gave the smallest laugh. "I'm sorry, I guess. I'm late." Emma shook her head immediately. "Don't joke. Please, you're going to be okay." Ryan looked at her quietly. Somewhere deep inside, he already knew the truth. The doctor entered the room. He gently explained that Ryan had suffered severe internal injuries. They had done everything they could, but the damage was too great. Emma refused to believe it. There has to be another surgery. There has to be something. The doctor lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry." After the doctor left, silence filled the room. Ryan reached weakly toward the bedside table. "Open the drawer." Emma wiped her tears and slowly opened it. Inside, she found the leather photo album, the same one Ryan had been carrying in his car. The corners were scratched. A few pages were stained from melted snow. She opened it carefully. Page after page, every Friday, every memory. Their first coffee, their walks through Boston Common, Emma laughing in the snow. Emma reading on platform 7. Emma asleep on his shoulder during a train ride. At the very end, the final page was no longer empty. Ryan had written something before leaving work. In slightly uneven handwriting, it read, "No matter how long our journey is, every moment with you was worth missing every train." Emma covered her mouth and cried harder than ever before. Ryan looked at her with tired eyes. You saved me." Emma shook her head. "No, you saved me." Ryan smiled faintly. "Before I met you, I wasn't living. I was just existing." He took a slow, painful breath. "You gave me back my Fridays." Emma held his hand tightly. "So don't leave." Ryan looked into her eyes. "If I could choose, I'd stay. Every Friday. For the rest of my life." A tear rolled down his cheek. "But I don't think I get to choose." Emma leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. "I love you." Ryan smiled. "I know." Then, after a long pause, he whispered, "And Emma, when Friday comes, don't stop buying coffee." She looked at him in confusion. He continued, "Even if I'm not there, sit on our bench, smile at the trains. Because somewhere, in every missed train, I'll still be finding my way back to you." The heart monitor continued its steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. Ryan looked at Emma one last time. His eyes were filled with peace. "I'll love you," he whispered, "in every lifetime." Emma squeezed his hand. "I'll wait." Ryan smiled softly. Then, with the last of his strength, he whispered one final word. Friday, his fingers slowly loosened in hers. The monitor's steady rhythm stretched into one long, unbroken tone. Beep. The room fell silent. Emma didn't scream. She didn't collapse. She simply sat there, still holding his hand, as if refusing to believe that letting go of his fingers meant letting go of the future they had dreamed of together. Outside the hospital window, snow continued to fall. Quietly, gently, covering the city in white, as if the world itself was mourning the love story that ended far too soon. 3 years passed. The city of Boston changed. New cafes opened, old buildings disappeared. Children who once hurried through South Station holding their parents' hands were now tall enough to catch trains on their own. Life kept moving, just as it always does. But for Emma, time had stopped on one snowy Friday evening. Every Friday, at exactly 6 p.m., Emma walked through the station doors wearing the same beige coat, the same blue scarf, the same quiet smile. She stopped at the old coffee stand. The elderly barista no longer asked what she wanted. He simply prepared 2 coffees. 1 vanilla latte, 1 black. He slid them across the counter and smiled gently. "No sugar." Emma smiled back. He never changed. The old man nodded. "Neither did you." She walked to platform 7. The same wooden bench. The same corner beneath the old station clock. She placed the black coffee on Ryan's side of the bench, held her own cup tightly with both hands, and waited. Not because she believed Ryan would step off a train. She knew he wouldn't. She waited because waiting had become another way of loving him. Passengers came and went. Some recognized her. Others didn't. To strangers, she looked like a woman waiting for someone who was running late. But the station workers knew the truth. No one disturbed her. No one asked questions. Every Friday, they silently protected her little tradition. One evening, as soft snowflakes drifted through the station, a little girl, no older than 7, wandered over to the bench. She wore a bright yellow winter coat and carried a stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. She looked at the untouched coffee. Then at Emma. With the innocent honesty only children possess, she asked, "Excuse me." Emma smiled. "Yes? Is someone sitting there?" Emma looked at the empty space beside her. For a long moment, she couldn't answer. Finally, she whispered, in a way, "Yes." The little girl tilted her head. "But I can't see anyone." Emma smiled through tears. "I can't either." The little girl thought about this carefully. Then she asked, "Who are you waiting for?" Emma looked down at the steaming cup of black coffee. 1,000 memories rushed through her mind. The missed train, the first coffee, the proposal, the hospital, the promise. She smiled softly. "My favorite person." The little girl looked around the station. "When will he get here?" Emma gazed toward the railway tracks stretching into the distance. Her voice was almost a whisper. "I think he's already here." The little girl didn't fully understand, but somehow she smiled. "My grandma says that people we love never really leave." Emma's eyes widened. She says, "They just move into our hearts where they don't have to say goodbye anymore." Emma felt tears filling her eyes. She looked up at the little girl. "Your grandma sounds very wise." The girl grinned proudly. "She is." Just then, the little girl's father called from across the platform. "Sophia, the train's here." The little girl waved goodbye. Before running away, she turned back. "I hope your favorite person knows you're still waiting." Emma smiled. "I think he does." Sophia smiled one last time before disappearing into the crowd. Emma sat there long after the train had left. For the first time in years, she looked at the empty coffee cup beside her and realized something. Ryan had never wanted her to spend the rest of her life trapped in the past. He wanted her to remember, not stop living. She reached into her bag and pulled out the old leather photo album. The pages had become worn over time. She slowly opened to the final page. Beneath Ryan's handwriting, she picked up a pen. With trembling fingers, she wrote, "Our story didn't end. It simply taught me how to love even after goodbye." A single tear fell onto the page. Emma smiled, not because the pain was gone, but because, for the first time in 3 years, it didn't feel quite as heavy. As the station clock struck 7 p.m., Emma stood up. She picked up her own coffee. Then she looked at Ryan's untouched cup. For a long moment, she simply stared at it. Finally, she gently picked it up too, not to throw it away, but to carry it with her, because something inside her was beginning to change, something Ryan had hoped for all along. Years later, passengers at South Station often spoke about a kind woman who bought 2 coffees every Friday. Sometimes she gave the second cup to a stranger, sometimes to a lonely student, sometimes to a tired nurse finishing a long shift. No one knew why. They simply called her the lady with 2 coffees. And somewhere, beyond the noise of the trains, beyond the passing years, beyond every goodbye, a love story that began with one missed train never truly reached its final station. Some people leave this world too soon, but the love they leave behind arrives exactly when someone else needs it most.